tell me a little bit more about how being in the backcountry saved your life?
It was definitely that sense of perspective. In general, we can feel like these little narcissistic monkeys and feel like all of our problems are the end of the world. So when you're in an ancient mountain range, that sense of scale can be really centering. It can help us know who we are and what we are. But man, I tear up thinking about some of the favorite places that I've lived. I mean, working with the trail crew, I would live at the edge of the meadow for 4 months. And that place was a friend to me. Having these relationships that are really steady, like relationship to place feels pretty steady to me. I mean, and there's things that come through like wildfires or floods that are catastrophic and scary, but the land comes back.
Just give me 30 seconds of your time. First off, a huge thank you for listening, because you tuning into the show week after week means the world to me. And it's proof that this dream that started way back when I was just a boy in Possum Hollow is bigger than I ever could have imagined. And secondly, we're just getting started. So if you enjoy what we do here, please join the 20% of listeners that listen to this show regularly and follow us on this app. So here's the promise I'm going to make to you. I'm going to do everything I can to make this show as good as it possibly can, even better, now and into the future. I'm going to deliver the guests that you want to listen to. I'm going to continue telling stories and compilations about hunting, fishing, rivers, mountains, and all of the other things that you enjoy about this show. Listen, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for listening to this show, because without you, none of the things that we're doing at Walker School of the Wild would be possible. Thank you. Kelly, welcome to the Wild Lab.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, despite all the technical glitches that we may be having getting this thing together. But I wanted to have you on because I saw some of your trips, and I saw one of your trips about packing Dungeons and Dragons and mule packing in the backcountry. And I was like, man, here's a woman with a story that I want to hear. It's not often that you see those two sort of things combined. For listeners that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a backcountry cook, you're a packer, you're a mule skinner, I'm assuming, as well. How did you get into this? Tell us the story of Kelly, how, you got into being a packer and being a mule skinner. How did you get into it, Kelly?
I've been working in the wilderness this is my 14th year. I grew up backpacking and hiking a lot. I was a very nerdy nature kid. So I think I always knew I wanted to end up in the wilderness. I feel very fortunate to be in my 14 years now of a lot of wilderness adventures. But I started on a trail crew. I was with the California Conservation Corps Backcountry Trails program, which is an amazing gateway to getting into wilderness work. I went on and then I did about a year of trail work. I cooked for the CCC for a long time. So I cooked for 5 different seasons, and Corps members I really love working in outdoor youth development, something that's near and dear to my heart. They lost their funding for a trail cruise. I lost my job, which seems to be a trend right now. That was, 7 years ago, I want to say. So I got hired as a ranger. I worked as a field biologist, especially in watershed restoration. And then when they really ran out of funding for me with the Forest Service, I ended up getting hired by a private pack station here in Eastern Sierra. And I've been running pack trips for the last 6 years. Yeah, and I identify as a backcountry cook. I am a very mediocre packer, to be quite honest. My heart is very much in packing. I love riding. I ride all winter long. And mule skinner is a very complicated term for most packers because it's not the kindest term for what we do with our mules. Most of us, I think, are pretty nerdy and, love our animals. And yeah, it's kind of a loaded term. Sounds pretty cool, though.
Break that down for us. Why is it a loaded term?
Got it. Well, I think historically a mule skinner, it was a time where maybe animals were considered more like tools than they are like our coworkers or our friends. So like the whole concept and visual of like skinning a mule isn't great. I think it comes from lashing a mule. I have to look it up, the etymology of it. But at this point, I like to say that I'm coaxing our mules down trail like we are mule cheerleaders. So we're whistling to them. And I mean, mules are great animals because you have to win their trust for them to like want to follow you. It's a lot different than the relationship you might have with a horse. Where yeah, like a horse, you can kind of tell what to do, but a mule, you got to convince to like you.
No, I hear you. I grew up. I mean, I was a professional horse trainer for like 15 years before I got into
Awesome.
the work that I'm doing now. Yeah, mule skinner is a term that I grew up with and I used, and I hear you with the rhetoric of it and the way that it sounds. And I use it largely because it's the word that like people taught me growing up, but then I can also understand some of the hesitancy and some of the negative connotations that it might hold. And you're right, you cannot make a mule do anything, pretty much.
You could
Anything,
try.
anything. Well, you can try anything that they don't want to do, at least. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself and how to be a human. Honestly, some of the biggest lessons that I learned about myself and how to be a human, I learned from being horses. I'm curious, what have you learned about yourself from working with mules? What have they taught you?
Oh, I mean, I think how to communicate effectively. So much of our relationships with animals, there's this language barrier. I also have a dog who's my coworker, and got into horses around the same time I got a dog. It was my first time having a dog as an adult who wasn't just, a family pet. It's, so often you come to these situations that are complicated, and maybe my safety is at risk or their safety is at risk. And learning how to communicate effectively with a animal that doesn't speak your language is really complicated. It also taught me how to communicate better in general, and also kind of how to hold myself and center my energy and be somebody who is communicating beyond just language.
Mhm.
I think the animals can really sense like where you're at emotionally. The mules in particular, if you're kind of an angry, difficult, scary person, they know they're not going to come near you. Where I've been in complicated situations, and the first thing I'll do is like take some deep breaths and kind of center myself. And the mules know, they can tell.
They absolutely do. I mean, the horses know, the mules know. They know whether you're angry, whether you're sad, whether you have no idea what you're doing. They absolutely know. Yeah. And so then what got you into when did the cooking start? When did you bring that in?
I cooked my first trail season. So when I was working trail, I think our cook had to go out for a couple of days for a doctor's appointment. And I was immediately interested. I had worked in restaurants for 15 years, albeit front of house, not back of house. I lived in San Francisco for 8 years. I actually moved to San Francisco because I wanted to be a cook. And I went to every restaurant in my neighborhood. It was like, I want to be a dishwasher and work my way up to the top. And they were like, you're like a little blonde girl, like you could be a hostess. So I got hired as a hostess. Thanks, misogyny. And after my first week at a restaurant, I was like, I don't want to be trapped in a hot kitchen full of angry men for minimum wage. So that debuted about 15 years of just working front of house in restaurants, which I love. I really love being a part of people's like special nights. Like so much of
Mm.
working in a restaurant was like helping people come together for celebrating a birthday or an anniversary, whatever it is. And I feel similarly about my job now. Like I host a dinner party every night, be it at like 12,000 feet in this remote wilderness setting. And a lot of it is facilitating these opportunities for people to build community and break bread and have conversations that might not help happen otherwise. But yeah, I started cooking, I mean, years and years and years ago, just in general. And then when I was on this trail crew, had the opportunity to cook a couple meals, loved it. I was a decent trail worker. There's a ton of great trail workers out there. There's a huge lack of backcountry cooks within the Park Service and Forest Service. So I really saw that for me to be the most useful to this program that had done so much for me and then sort of trail work world as a whole, I had a lot to give as a cook. So I did my first season as a cook. It was very challenging. There was no training and I loved it. And then I went on and cooked. Yeah, God, I don't even know how many seasons I've done now because I've done some winter seasons as well. But yeah,
Mm.
it's thousands of meals at this point. I absolutely love it.
Right on. And so it's a lot about bringing people together. At least that's what I'm hearing from your answer. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I feel like food is this incredible means of cultural exchange and comfort. And I mean, the most direct way you can provide care to somebody is to feed them. And that goes back as long as we have been Homo sapiens. So I feel like this real
As long as we've been
ancestral tie
eating,
to
right?
that. Yes, I mean, honestly, but way before that. I mean, that's what makes us little animals too. But yeah, I love like the directness of that and the joy of it. There's so much that's difficult in this world. And some days it's, all I got is like a good cup of coffee and like dinner to look forward to. So if I can
Mhm.
provide that for people, it feels meaningful to me.
So what you were talking earlier about, your dog is your coworker and the mules, you have relationships with them. And I really like that because I mean, that's a lot of how I approach the world as well is, having a relationship with non-human animals. What role, if you're talking about forming communities, right? Or helping people with communities through cooking in the Alpine and the backcountry, what role do the animals play, dogs, mules, whatever, What do they play in the forming of that community?
They're a huge part of our community. I think it's really interesting that historically humans always lived and worked very closely with other species. That was how we became humans until we built civilization. And at this point, people have really limited interactions with other species. Like we might keep dogs or cats in our homes, but the relationship with those animals is also sort of different than it would be if you were like, like my mules and I are in life and death situations sometimes. Like my dog is chasing bears off in the night. Like we depend on each other in a way that somebody doesn't necessarily depend on their house cat. And not to say that's not a valuable relationship. My dog is also my say and like my dear friend. But I think these nuanced, complicated relationships with other species are a huge part of what made us human. They were always a part of our communities, and that's really changed with industrialization. So I love that a pack trip gives people the opportunity to have these ancestral relationships. It doesn't matter where in the world you come from. There's been a history of horsemanship and yeomanship globally. And I think sometimes in America in particular, we have this like grasp on horse culture and like the cowboy identity that doesn't have a lot to do with the history of it. And really, no matter who you are and where you're from, your ancestors have relationships with equines. And so facilitating those meetings feels really important to me.
I totally agree with you. No matter where you come from, your ancestors had relationships with horses. I mean, horses and dogs, and primarily horses and dogs, helped create human civilization. We wouldn't be human without their help. How do you help facilitate that in the backcountry when you're on these backcountry trips with people?
Some of it's conversations like this one. I like to encourage, discussion and dialogue about where we are and, this like wacky way that we just all had our tents brought in. But just introducing folks to the horses and mules. I mean, I've had so many people who've never ridden a horse before in their lives, and that can be really scary for people. A lot of my trips are hiking trips. So people hike in and then the mules bring in our equipment, which is great if you have a hard time carrying a heavy backpack. We have a lot of older clients or clients with mobility issues. But, beginning of the trip and then during, it's, hey, you had your lunch, take your little sandwich crust or your apple core, and I'm going to show you how to come say hi to Lily or whatever mule is nearby. And I mean, people turn into little kids again. I mean, I've had like 75-year-old neuroscientists who I'm like, we're going to feed a mule an apple core, and they are 12 years old again. It is this really profound relationship. And again, for most people, like, they may have never seen a mule in their lives. We just don't have many opportunities to be in the same space as equines anymore. So a pack trip is this opportunity for people to be around these animals as well, just physically.
Yeah. So you're what kind of people hire you as a packer? Like you're talking about 75-year-olds. I think you mentioned like 90-year-olds, and you have Dungeons and Dragons people. Like what kind of people hire you as a packer?
Yeah, man, all kinds of people. Historically, so mules are a mobility aid. Like I think that people tend to hire mules out of necessity. There reaches a point where all of us are going to have our last trip into the high country. I think about this a lot. I don't necessarily get to choose that. I could be in an accident tomorrow where I lose a lot of my ability to hike. But my retirement plan is definitely, a mule and having some physical support and bringing the things I need to survive in the wilderness with me. So a lot of our clients for me for the last 6 years have been older folks who maybe spent their whole lives backpacking and they've got bum knees and backs. And now they can hire a pack string to help them access the wilderness. I will say we're seeing in the packing industry that a lot of people don't know packing exists. So we have these older clients, some of whom I'm on their last trip into the high country. I talked about I had a couple who were 94, 96, and they were on their very last trip into the high country. And it was really amazing to be a part of that and also quite sad. But, that's two clients who aren't going to go on a trip anymore. So I've been really invested in trying to get young people to know about packing because, regardless of your mobility, it's this amazing opportunity to interact with these animals, to eat better than you probably do if you're just carrying all your feet on your back, and also to participate in this incredible tradition of mulemanship and packing that, again, has been a big part of our lives, if not recently, then historically.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get a lot of nerds too. I mean, I feel like it's like nature people it tend to be kind of nerdy. Yeah, and a lot of doctors, I think, because they understand the physical repercussions of climbing into the high Sierra. They're like, I'm going to protect my knees. I'm going to hire a mule.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been back in the day. I used to do when I was training horses. I packed a fair amount, usually out of Kennedy Meadows on the west slope, not usually on the east slope.
Nice. Kennedy
Um,
Meadows Pack Station?
yeah, but it's been some years since I have. I think certainly, hopefully, when I'm 94, 95, hopefully, maybe even a little bit older, then yeah, absolutely, that will be how I get into the backcountry. I could totally see myself doing that in my older years. But one of the things that I notice about a lot of the food that you're cooking, like I was looking at some of the pictures of the food that you're cooking, and like you're not just cooking like regular, backpacking food or whatever. You're cooking like food that looks like it's really nourishing. It looks like it's not just fuel, but some of it looks really amazing. So I'm curious, what is your cooking philosophy in the backcountry?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to me that I attempted a through hike the PCT in 2017 and I hiked like 700 miles. What was shocking to me was just like what through hikers were eating. And in general, if you're in the high country, and I work out of the Eastern Sierra where I'm oftentimes above 10,000 feet for the summer, your body is working really hard just existing. The air is thin. You're hiking these insane mountains. Like your body has more requirements than it would in your day to day life. And people are just eating like slop.
Yeah.
We really do not provide our bodies the nourishment that they need at this time where we are asking the most from them. And there are big constraints on that. I when I backpack, which I do frequently, I'm not making the same kind of sort of food that I cook on a pack trip. Although I do carry vegetables with me, no matter if I'm backpacking or on a pack trip. I just think that for me personally, I know my body just needs certain nourishment in order to like operate well and to feel good. But for me, especially with having the ability to have pack meals and also work within this tradition of backcountry cooking, I really want to provide super nourishing food for people. So a lot of veggie heavy meals, tons of protein. I, have looked a lot into sort of what are the nutritional needs of somebody who's hiking a lot. Cooking for trail crews for 7 years meant that I had this group of people who sometimes were eating like 10,000 calories a day.
For sure.
Yeah, and I oftentimes get big eaters on trips. It's people who love to be in the high country and like you just need a lot of calories to stay warm. Just simple stuff
Yeah.
like that is harder at altitude. And yeah, I also want food to be like fun. So often we think of food as fuel for our bodies, but it's also what makes us human culturally. Like I have recipes that are important to me because of my family ties to them, foods that were introduced to me by people that I love. So food holds a lot of weight. And I think that creating meals that are fun and like sometimes silly or irreverent in the backcountry is excellent for people. And without question, that's usually the thing that people remember the most from pack trips. My boss would always be like, cooking's not that important in the scheme of things. And I'm like, no one's going home and being like, my packers had like a beautiful diamond hitch. People do not mind that sort of thing. And of course, they're going to remember like the incredible sunsets and the views and the great fishing and just the experience of being out there. But what makes a pack trip unique is that you have these incredible meals. And for me, it's a lot of lush salads. I do a lot of global cooking. Living and growing up in the Bay Area, I was exposed to just a lot of food. Chinese food is very much my comfort food. So my menus are oftentimes rooted in like the food I grew up with. And here in California, like a lot of Mexican and Latin American food as well. Yeah. So it's not just like, I think people sometimes come on a trip and they're expecting like chili mac and like hamburgers, which I ate a lot of when I started working trail. And now I'm like not so interested in eating as often.
Do you do much game meat in your cooking?
I haven't
Well,
had the opportunity to here. I would like to. I have in my personal life, a lot of my friends hunt, and it's lovely cooking regularly for hunters because they look out for me. If I have a friend who has some elk for me right now that's on its way to Bishop that I'm excited to cook. But so much of the Sierra, there's not a ton of hunting. Honestly, when you're that high, there's just like not a lot of game. It's not the greatest place for hunting. I've looked into cooking for hunting camps, but typically in the fall is when I worked as a field biologist, and I really enjoy that work. But I love using game and foraged ingredients. I cook a lot of fish out there,
Mhm.
which is exciting for me as a like fisheries biologist, quote unquote. But I would love to. At some point, I'll do some hunting camps. That would be really exciting for me.
Well, maybe you can come out and cook for one of our hunting camps sometime, Kelly. I mean, that's what we do is we take men hunting, and yeah, always in need of a good cook, quite frankly.
Oh, I would love that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's been on my bucket list.
I'm curious too, like as a woman in the packing industry, what is it like for you? Because traditionally it's been a male dominated industry, and so I'm just curious, what is it like?
So at least in California right now, I like to say the horse girl shall inherit the earth. The
Is
pack
it
station I've
right?
been working at is a majority women. We have an all woman team competing at Mule Days this week. Actually, I think we might have
Mm,
two all women teams. But you look at who culturally for the last 20 years has been kind of encouraged to work on horsemanship, and it's a lot of women. There's men who grew up on a ranch, but if you didn't grow up with horse culture in your backyard, you weren't necessarily as a man or a boy very encouraged to like go take lessons. Like there's some
mm,
like weirdness there where a lot of girls, these weirdo horse girls, fell in love with horsemanship and then wanted a job working with stock and they found packing. So here in the Sierra, we have at least three women-owned pack stations now. Yeah, so I mean, there's a ton of women both packing boots on the ground and then also running these pack stations. And then within the government, Park Service, Forest Service, would say in California at very least it's a majority woman. And I know that in Montana, I have friends that pack in Montana. There still can be kind of hard as a woman if you want to work at a pack station. They're going to make you cook. There's definitely some bias there still. But my 70-year-old boss, who's quite curmudgeonly and has some sort of old-fashioned ideas, had said a couple years ago that thought women made better packers. They were
mm,
gentler on the animals. They don't drink so much.
yeah.
They don't fight. And yeah, maybe they grew up, their whole childhood really focused on being incredible riders in a way that a lot of young men maybe weren't as interested in. So I
Mm,
think that's changing a lot.
mm. So, yeah, I can see the talking about maybe having better relationships with the animal. I mean, because I grew up in cowboy culture and I learned a lot of ways not to have good relationships with animals at first. And then it took me a lot of years to, unlearn some of those things. But I do appreciate sometimes the way, and this is a massive generalization, of course, obviously, but I do appreciate sometimes the ways that women approach animals in a more gentler, less dominating, less controlling sort of way, as opposed to some of the ways that I was taught to, which was some of the just cowboy up. And as you said at the beginning of this conversation, just kind of make them do what you want to make them do. And I had to unlearn a lot of those lessons I had to unlearn over the years. So I can appreciate probably why one of your bosses might say that women might make better packers as men. And yeah, there's I'm sure a ton of stigma around men getting help and taking lessons and learning things because I don't know if you know this, but we already know everything anyway.
I've heard that.
Yeah, we don't necessarily need them. No, I'm joking, obviously, but yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting you say that because, like I said, I haven't been around that world in quite some time, but it's really great to hear that it's changing, that it's not just a male-dominated world. In fact, as you're saying, it might actually be a female-dominated world, which is really interesting and beautiful to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I work with incredible men too. I mean, some of the,
Mm,
the people I learned the most from are men who, were willing to hold the door and teach me hitches and be like, hey, let me
mhm,
modify this for you because I don't have the same strength as some of my 24-year-old 6 foot tall
mhm.
coworkers. So I do think that the people who are oftentimes holding the door are men. Yeah, I feel really fortunate to be in a community though that does feel really accepting and welcoming to all people, which is great.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I'm curious. One of the things I really like, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the Eastern Sierra Alpine and in the backcountry, and not a not a. I mean, I used to spend a lot more time above 10,000 feet because I was a climber and do a lot of alpine fishing. Now I spend a lot more time like in between 7 and 8 or 7 and 9, so to speak, because that's where a lot more of the game tends to be. So that's where I spend a lot more time these days. But I'm curious what benefits individually, maybe from a mental health perspective, maybe from an emotional perspective, maybe from a physical, psychological, physical perspective. What benefits have you gotten from spending so much time in the wilderness, in the backcountry with mules? What benefits have you gotten from it?
I mean, it saved my life. I had a very tumultuous youth. I was very dependent on drugs and alcohol for like 10 years of my life. And I had picked up the pieces prior to getting into trail work in 2012, but like was still in a pretty fragile place. I didn't love the work I was doing and knew I wasn't super happy in the city. And in every way, wilderness saved my life. It was such a huge part of my youth too. I grew up in a pretty rural area. And so I was just surrounded by wildlands and then living in San Francisco, a big city, for as long as I did. I think that in so many subtle ways, it took a toll. And I love visiting the city now, but like cognitively, I'm kind of a feral wilderness creature and get really overwhelmed. But yeah, for me, it feels very much like my natural habitat. It's funny what you said about elevation. Like, I love to ask people, what is your preferred ecosystem? What's your natural habitat? And I love the High Sierra. It is absolutely beautiful. I feel really privileged to spend as much time here as I do. But I am very much like a 7,000 to 9,000 feet mixed
Mm.
conifer forest, biodiverse, lush kind of gal. Love a big meadow. We have, lots of that this year. It's just a huge mountain range.
Sure.
Where I am, it's so high and so austere. It feels so much like kind of God's country. Like we
Mhm.
might be allowed to pass through. And there is something about the vastness and ancientness of it that makes me feel small in a way that's pretty healing. Like it makes my issues seem kind of small in comparison. And then beyond that, the work I do has given my life real meaning and purpose. I feel like my goal in life is to get people into the wilderness by literally holding the door, making them feel safe and comfortable. A lot of people did not grow up like me, where I had, a dad who would take me camping and backpacking, and I just had a lot of access to wilderness in general. And so for people who haven't had that experience from youth, it's scary going to the woods. You don't know like what sleeping bag to buy or like how to pack your backpack. So it's great when people sign up for a guided trip and having guides who are there to hold your hand and provide advice. I'm in email discussion right now with somebody who's camped but never backpacked, and they're really nervous and really excited, and they're going to come on a trip this summer. And I'm like super excited for them. Those are kind of my favorite clients. I love people with tons of experience. I learned so much for them, but for people who like really haven't had that opportunity to get to take them to my church and be like, hey, welcome. This is yours as well.
Mhm.
Feels really special to me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And there is something really beautiful about like an alpine meadow. It's funny that you like asking people what their favorite or what ecosystem they would be. I always ask people what their favorite ecosystem is, which is a similar question. Um, I mean, and one of mine is definitely that alpine meadow. It can be so stark, but also so grand and just also delicate and beautiful, and then feeds so much of life that flows below it. And you mentioned the awe and feeling small in a large place. And I just wonder if you can tell me a little bit more about like how being in the backcountry saved your life. Like what was it? Was it the smallness? Was it the shrinking of the ego? What was it you think that saved your life? Because I mean, I had a similar experience, so I'm curious to unpack that a little.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely that sense of perspective. I mean, I think in general, we can feel we're like these little narcissistic monkeys and we feel like all of our problems are the end of the world. So when you're like in a ancient mountain range, mind you, this year is kind of a baby in the scheme of things, mountain
Mhm.
range wise, but it's still a hell of a lot older than I am. That sense of scale, I think, can be really centering. They can help us kind of know who we are and what we are. Again, the purpose of the work. I think for a long time, especially as a woman, I had this sense that my body was this object that was like there to
Mhm.
look a certain way. And my first week working trails, I was like, oh, my body is a tool. Like its job is to
Mm.
do things for me that allow me to live the life I want to live. And it was this massive mental shift for me where suddenly food was this thing that I had to eat in order to do the things I wanted to do with my life, which, I'd had
Mm.
many issues with eating disorders over the years. Yeah. So I think seeing the utility of my body in a place where I'm just sort of an animal and not just like this person wearing an outfit walking around in the city, I'm like, at 12,000 feet and I need to hike 16 miles today. Like just a very different way of existing in a body than when we're scrolling on our phones and existing in a world where we're oftentimes judged much more on how we look than what we can do. So that part was huge. And then also like the relationships that I have, the most profound relationships in my life are with place. Like, I mean, I have, my mom, I love dearly, maybe top dog of my hierarchy. It's people I love, my dad, my brother, and my friends and my dogs. But man, I tear up thinking about some of the favorite places that I've lived. I mean, working with trail crew, I would live at the edge of the meadow for 4 months, and that place was a friend to me. I feel that about different parts of the Sierra as well. But having these relationships that are really steady, like relationship to place feels pretty steady to me. I mean, and there's things that come through like wildfires or floods that are catastrophic and scary, but the land comes back. you can recover. There's this consistency and strength there that I find really grounding. Yeah, wilderness has given me that as well.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, and it's something that I've spoken about many times on this podcast, but like place, my connection to it is also was a huge factor in saving my own life from drug addiction and suicidal ideation, all of these things. So I'm curious, which is there a specific place that really that you can relate
Um,
to?
my heart is very much in Northern California. I spent 7 or 8 years in the Trinity Alps in Klamath, and that
Mm.
is my favorite place on earth. I visited a bit when I was a child, and I just have these really lovely memories of just sort of. It's one of the most biodiverse places in the world. They call it the Klamath Knot. There's 5 tectonic plates that all come together, so you get these really interesting bioregions. Yeah, there's just a lushness there that, like, I don't know. I sort of feel like when I'm in these really lush, lower elevation, biodiverse areas, that like the animal of my body is like, okay, we could survive here. There's like
Mhm.
food, we got water. Where if I'm at like Guitar Lake or Mount Whitney, I'm like, all right, I got like a couple hours. Well, like I got a couple days, but I feel like just more at rest and at peace and safe in places that have more of the things that my body needs to survive. But yeah, I just love Northern California. I'll end up there at some point. There's a bunch of amazing packing history up there as well, although there's not much commercial packing. The Sierra right now is like one of the last bastions of commercial packing kind of in the world. I mean, we have, a bunch in Montana and Colorado, some in
Mhm.
Idaho, but I think by volume of pack stations, like there's over a dozen pack stations in the Sierra. It's counted a dozen on the east side, and if I add it on the west. And then you got plenty in South America, Argentina, Patagonia. There's a big history of packing down there.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah. So, but I'm in this place where I feel really fortunate with part of what's kept me here is that there is this long tradition of working with mules and I love that. And I do love the Sierra. It's stunning here. And I've spent 6 summers here now. I've ridden over 2,000 miles. It's an incredible place to spend a part of your life.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you, and that's why I spend the vast majority of this part of my life there. Exactly, because I find a lot of solace there. A lot of my purpose is exactly aligned with yours. Getting people out into the wilderness, helping people reconnect with land, helping people reconnect with animals and plants, and just as a way to really help them reconnect with themselves. And or at least their animal selves, perhaps not their. I like how you put it, my body went from being an object to tool, and performing now, but in the mountains, you're an animal, right? And I think that's a huge part of what makes me feel like me. And I think it's also a huge part of why I'm doing what I'm doing as well is helping people step out of the performative model or even the scrolling model of Instagram, is to be stepping into the model of being an animal in the world, living within the world as opposed to just being an observer of it. And I'm curious, since place has been such an important part of your identity, of who you are and your evolution, and also we sort of touched on this before we jumped on. A lot of these places you love and that I love and that we all love, they're at risk now. All the public lands things that are going on. We can name names and talk about different things, but I'm curious, like what role does a packer play in in conservation and preserving public lands? Like what role do you all play in that dynamic?
Yeah, packers are some of the original conservationists and certainly like the first trail crews. It was funny when I started working in the Sierra, I have a lot of friends who work in Kings Canyon. That's still sort of my trail community. And before they had trail crew, their packers were out there. The trail crew uniform was like jeans and a Wrangler shirt. So sort of the origin of trail work in many places was these packers who had to go out and clear trail to get their mules through. I think that there is this huge history of packers being involved in trail work, so facilitating access, and then beyond that, almost any sort of science project that's going on in the wilderness science project, but let's say a restoration project for a watershed, or we're collecting data about for snow surveys. all of that's
Mhm.
being facilitated by mules. I work predominantly in, uppercase W wilderness areas where we have all these different land designations in the United States, but that wilderness, as defined by the Wilderness Act of 1964, doesn't allow for motorized equipment. So the only way you can really move stuff through it is by mules. And one thing that's really risky right now is they're trying to repeal parts of the Roadless Act, which would allow us to open
Mhm.
up these not necessarily capital rural W wilderness areas, but these wildlands to road construction to facilitate
Mhm.
things like logging or mining. And few things affect the wilderness character of land more than having a road blast through it.
Mhm.
The construction of them is incredibly impactful. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting for me. The Park Service in particular now does a lot of helicopter resupplies and are using helicopters increasingly for all kinds of projects in the parks. And it is such a bummer for me. I hate hearing helicopters in the wilderness. I hate seeing them.
Mhm.
The ecological impacts are pretty staggering. And I just look around at like the hikers we pass. We'll have through hikers from like Germany and you show up with 10 mules and like literally jaws on the floor. Like they are so
Yeah.
stoked. Seeing a pack string of mules is this like kind of beautiful experience for at least most hikers. I mean, some people do not like us, but I would say 95% are stoked to see us. And that compared to having a helicopter blast through for $500,000 with just like incredible amounts of exhaust. I would just love to see us continuing to use packing, which was sort of what the Wilderness Act intended. Um, but yeah, I mean, my job is totally at risk. I lost my job because it cuts to the Forest Service years ago.
Is that right?
I never had job security. I have so many friends who have lost their jobs because of recent political happenings. And it's really hard too. I mean, I've been pleased. I have a lot of friends who we have different opinions surrounding politics, but in the world that I exist in, all of us are environmentalists to some degree. And I am really happy to see Love of the Land winning out. Like, I have friends who voted Republican for 40 years, but
Mhm.
now are seeing the lands that they love, some of these really profound relationships for them be detrimentally affected, and they are choosing the land.
Yeah.
That to me has been really great. I do think that in America, we're seeing degradation based on this lack of actual relationship with the land. Like people are losing
Mhm.
touch with the land. They're not seeing it as a relationship or something that we really have to defend or that we depend on. So facilitating these opportunities like you do or like I do, where we're guiding trips and kind of teaching people how to relate to the land can help people to care enough to save it. At least is
Mhm.
my hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. And I vacillate back and forth between, and obviously I'm part of the problem with this, but I think of like Joshua Tree National Park in Southern California, which has and rightfully been claimed to say that, we're loving it to death, which I used to go back there back in the day and there was hardly any people there. And now you kind of go and this is partly to do with the fact that the park service is so underfunded, but like there's people camping in places they shouldn't be camping and people going off-roading in places they shouldn't be off-roading. And so there's the old curmudgeonly guy in me that's like, wow, stay out of my backcountry. This is, like I've been coming here for years and this is it. But the realist in me knows that the more people that we have to love a place, the more people that we have to place. And I think it is becoming realized in this country. And I think it actually always was, but I think it doesn't really, it's never really vocalized until some of these places are threatened. But I think it is becoming realized on all sides. I don't even want to say both because I think there's so many of us are neither here nor there that these places matter, that public lands matter. They matter to us as Americans, they matter to wildlife, they matter to indigenous cultures, they matter for a lot of reasons. And it is really, I think it's simultaneously really sad to see, what this administration is doing to public lands, but it also really makes me happy to see people coming together to unite over public lands. And it is part of my dream that, these public lands becomes a nonpartisan issue. And it becomes an issue that either, no matter what side you are on, if you're not for public lands, well, you're against like the vast majority of Americans. Cause it does seem like most people, regardless of what your politics are, as you said, Kelly, most people do seem to be in favor of having more public lands, more access to public lands, and better conservation on these public lands. And I am familiar with the importance of packers in conservation on public lands because I've done a number of fish restoration projects on streams in the Eastern Sierra. I'm not going to name names, but all of them were facilitated by packers, right? To pack in supplies, pack out the supplies. And without the packers, those projects, which, by the way, were highly successful, never would have happened. Never would have happened.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm thinking about some of these places. I mean, to get a helicopter into some of these places would have required a tremendous amount of work, quite frankly. Because, I mean, you think to land a helicopter, there was no place to land a helicopter. And so I would hate to see packers be replaced fully by aerial use. I just think that would be an absolute travesty. And I think it also like would negate, there's a certain level of eye on the ground witnessing that takes place, when you're caretaking a place or when you're moving through a place that, you have a different relationship with it. And oh, like that stream, I don't know, the bow in that stream is bigger this year or it's smaller this year, or, this aspen grove isn't doing as well. Like you have a different relationship with the land if you're moving through it on a mule or on a horse than you do if you're moving through on a helicopter or you're moving through on a plane. Like you're not going to be able to see some of the smaller, intricate things that happen in an ecosystem that are necessary to conserving it for the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have boots on the ground, and that's something packers do. I mean, I've called in 3 fires since I've worked for a private outfit. I mean, just campfires people left attended and unattended that I put out. I don't know what would have happened if I had been there. It wouldn't have been good. I again work for private operations, and we'll cut out, I'd say, at least 10 trees every trip we're on. And those are 10 trees that wouldn't get cut out otherwise. A helicopter's not doing that.
Right.
The fire risk from helicopters is substantial. And I will say it's not just that the parks are choosing to use helicopters more. A big part is a lot of their packing programs have been gutted. They can't offer a very, I don't know, pretty job to a lot of packers with the job insecurity, the low pay, the bureaucracy. I mean, I left the Forest Service in large part because it was kind of degrading. Like I just felt like I wasn't safe. I was working with people who'd fun to work around. It's really hard to fire people within the Park Service and Forest Service. I'd be working with people who had been pushed around from district to district for 20 years, who are just like mean alcoholics or nutty, like just get these weirdo people and they're around for decades. But, I've worked with a couple people at the outfits I work with who left the government, got a 30% pay increase, didn't have to deal with all the paperwork, the government shutoffs. There's just a lot of junk you have to deal with currently as a government employee working in public lands that they're losing some of their best people. And that's hit especially hard in packing. So some of the historic packing programs for different parks and forests have disappeared. And so instead they're now turning to helicopter use. But once you go that way, it's very hard to go back.
Sure.
I've heard of places where they don't really have mules anymore. So how do you rebuild a program from scratch? How do you, if you lose all of your packers, who shows the new people, where all the bits and pieces are, literally. But yeah, I mean, I think right now, I really wish that, I don't know, I wish that the government could provide more secure, rewarding, comfortable jobs to people. That's the way that they save packing within those agencies. And I don't know how feasible that is. This isn't like a one-sided issue too. Like none of our government officials are doing a decent job of representing us. I get targeted as, it's funny being in the packing industry and I'm like a queer woman from San Francisco. Like people look me up and down and are just like, who the hell are you? I'm like, we all have the same enemies, dude. Like it's chill. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, I've seen this big resurgence though, as these lands are threatened, as people are realizing what we have at stake, where we're reprioritizing and really thinking about what we need to do to maintain the land that we love.
What's lost? Let's say packers go away in California. What do we lose?
So as I was saying, you lose a lot of your ability to get work done in public lands the way that the Wilderness Act intended. Instead, we're going to move over to helicopters and other more impactful technology in order to, restock lakes or, maintain ranger stations, whatever it is. For me, it's this kind of beautiful tradition that's been a big part of, the land here for a long time. That's sort of fraught. I mean, I think that, the first way that white people saw most of the land where we recreate was on back of a mule. People don't really understand how few horses there were in the West compared to mules. Not how few, but like mules were a big freaking deal here. Um, but that context was pretty bloody and pretty awful. I've talked to some Native people here who have a pretty fraught relationship with like mule days and all the mule culture here. That historically hasn't been super welcoming. It's oftentimes represented, land management that was not beneficial to the land in the long run or to people who live here. Um, I don't know. It's very complicated, but I think today that again, with the sort of disappearance of horse culture, no culture from our lives, that we have this little bastion of skills and traditions in the realm of packing that I don't want to see lost to time. And we are seeing, a lessening of packing. My boss bought 2 pack stations in the last 15 years because no one was going to buy them. And they would have just shut off that little part of the Sierra. It used to be that there was a pack station of pretty much every drainage in the Eastern Sierra. And it's amazing that we still have as many as we do, but a lot of their owners are aging. There's not much of a plan for what happens next. But that also shuts off access to all those people who cannot carry a heavy backpack into the backcountry. These are an accessibility aid for a lot of older people or people with mobility issues that I don't want to see disappear.
Well, what do you hope for the future then? What do you hope for the future, like packing on the Sierra East side, or maybe, yeah, well, what's your...
I hope we see some change. It's been really hard for these pack stations to kind of I just adjust to like modern culture. I mean, so much now, like our entire economy is based on like 15-second long videos on TikTok and Instagram. And I don't love that, but it is sort of our reality. Something I've really struggled with is like in running a business is like, oh God, I have to participate in the circus. But at the same time, it's really fun for me to like post a video and have people be like, holy crap, I didn't know this existed. People are kind of stoked to learn about us. But there is this old school mentality with a lot of the pack stations where like they don't want to be present on socials. The government has historically been really, really weird about that. When I worked for the Forest Service, I'd like get in trouble all the time for posting like, I don't know, like a cute picture of, whatever I was doing out in the wilderness. They just are very secretive, and that is changing a bit. But I think also, a lot of the pack trips that have been available for years were targeted towards an older audience. Maybe they'll kind of point of them was that we just carry your stuff and some beer and your fishing rods into the backcountry and you fish for a couple of days, which I'm down with. That's super fun. But I really love that I'm doing these themed trips where I'm hiring educators and giving people this opportunity to then get more than just their packs carried in. Or, I hired my friend Matt Borgord, who's an incredible botanist. So we have a whole trip centered around learning about the botany of the Golden Trout Wilderness. So it gives people this opportunity for education and stewardship that they wouldn't have if they just went backpacking themselves. So I think that the pack stations need to start offering more than just a ride. And that's hard to do. And they don't have time. Something that's been interesting for me is this last year, I started running my own business in earnest. And so having 5 trips in summer was so much more work than I thought it would be. Just like the volume of emails I have to answer on any given day. And I look at my friends who are running their own pack stations and like, they don't have time for that. So they've been really excited when I come to them and say, hey, I'm going to arrange this trip. I'll handle all the booking for it. I'm going to hire these educators. I'm going to do all the marketing for it. And you're going to provide the meals. So I really got into this too, seeing that that was a gap where the pack station I worked for needed help. And I like being a helper. So I think in general in my career, I've looked for where work's needs done that people aren't doing. And I thought that this was a place where I could create cool opportunities for people who want to learn about the wilderness and then also support these pack stations by taking some of a load off of their back, with just like sort of the marketing and organizational end of visiting these pack trips.
Yeah, no, more than just a ride. I like that. And I think that's really, really important, more than just a ride. And because I think that's traditionally how a lot of people have seen the role of pack stations. But if you're talking about pack stations not becoming, but becoming more recognized as important in conservation, and these people in these places where you can go to not just get a ride into the backcountry, but also learn about the backcountry and also learn about yourself and learn these different things. And heck, even play Dungeons and Dragons in the backcountry. Then yeah, it becomes a different thing, and it becomes actually a much more powerful tool.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's funny, the D&D trip, I've had so much really fun reaction to, but huge fantasy nerd. I think part of why I love the wilderness is that it is a main character in all of my favorite fantasy series. But we worked on the campaign with Inman, our DM, and then Katie, who's swimming on, as our wildlife biologist ranger, where we were like, how can we use D&D as a method of learning about the wilderness? I'm really excited about bringing in like the next generation of PAX trip clients. Again, like in a season, I cook for maybe like 100 people, and I would say that 75-80% of those people are over 65, which has been amazing. Like, I hope when I'm 65, I've got 7 friends who are down to go into the high country with me. Like, I'm like, y'all are living my dream. They are wonderful people. But it's been fun having younger folks, learn about packing, have these cool interactions with mules, and then also have this opportunity to learn about the wilderness. I mean, I think about the season I was a wilderness ranger. I was the only wilderness ranger for 500,000 acres of wilderness. So I would tell people when I saw them that I was the most endangered species in the entire forest. And like, again, this was their one opportunity to like, learn how to cat hole or like talk to somebody who was knowledgeable about the area. So
Yeah.
I do trips all summer. I see rangers periodically. A lot of them are my friends, which is great. It's really fun to see friends out there. But it's cool having this opportunity to spend 6 or 8 or 10 days with people, and I'm like their personal ranger. We're going to learn all about the watershed ecology of this area. We're going to learn all about the native plants. We're going to learn about fire management. So I really feel like as a guide, I have an opportunity to step in and provide some context, provide some instruction, make sure my folks are like not pooping in the creek, like not starting like illegal fires. They have some help and assistance in recreating responsibly. And then beyond that, I have all these amazing partnerships with nonprofits. I mean, coming from the Forest Service, and most of my community are in the conservation world.
Yeah.
So I work with the Eastern Sierra Conservation Corps. I just did a project with Friends of the Inyo, who are an incredible lays and doing all these conservation orgs. I'm hopefully going to be doing a project with the Forest Service at the end of the summer. And then I'm doing a cook training with the PCTA, the Pacific Crest Trail Association. So I love being this like fun little middleman between all these different agencies. And then also we can hopefully get more work done, which is really fun as well. But yeah, one of my dreams is like to con people into doing trail work. Like the more I can get people out there, and I'm like, you're not just going to backpack. We're like secretly going to do a restoration project.
Well, I got some trails for you on the list of the northern part of the Sierra that are
Yeah.
not very well maintained. I will tell you that. Largely because nobody except for me and a couple of my friends go. So
Yeah, we're losing trail every year. They just don't have enough trail crew.
yeah. Well, Kelly, I really appreciate your time, and I want to be respectful of it. I want to leave you with the last word. Anything you want to say to the audience, maybe about the work you do, about stewardship in the backcountry. I just want to leave you with the last thought.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm always stoked to be in community with these other folks out there working in outdoor ed, and it was really fun looking into your trips. But yeah, if anybody's listening is interested in meeting some mules this summer, I have 5 trips. We're doing some botany trips, some ecology trips. We have the Dungeons and Dragons trip. Um, we have a backcountry cooking class, which I'm really excited about. And I have a discount code if anybody wants to come on a trip for $200 off. It's MuleFriend200, and you can sign in to get a little discount on a trip. I'm doing my last minute bookings. Our first trip starts in mid-June, so I can fill those last couple of spots. And I imagine that your listeners are exactly the kind of people I want to spend 5 days with in the wilderness.
I imagine they are. Where can they find you?
I'm at the Backcountry Cook on Instagram, and then the backcountrycook.com is my website. That's where you can sign up for a trip. And yeah, I love connecting with people online, and I'm very excited for this summer. I'm excited for the future. It's a kind of dark time right now, I feel like, for public lands in certain ways, but I really have seen this outpouring of love, and it's given me a lot of hope.
So that's sort of where I'm sitting at most of the time.
In the space of hope. I'm with you. I'm with you. I think it's easy to get down, especially if you're doing anything with conservation. It's easy to lose hope. But I also think, I mean, there's a lot of really good things happening in the world, and you know, you're doing really great stuff. There's a lot of other people on the east side doing really great stuff. So, yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing. Keep it up, Kelly.
Thanks, back
Appreciate
at
it.
you. All right, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
If this conversation stirred something in you and you want to learn how to make better decisions and be a leader in your own life, then I urge you to check out our upcoming Primal Hunt this October, where you'll not only learn how to hunt bear in the Eastern Sierra of California, but you will be challenged to make better decisions and learn how to step into a leadership role in your own life. To learn about that offering and all the other offerings at Walker School in the Wild and ways where you can connect with yourself and the land, check us out at www.stepintoyourwild or on all the socials at Step Into Your Wild. Remember, stay curious, stay connected, and stay wild.